Hello, everyone. This is Kevin. I have a real quick walkthrough of something that we were discussing with someone recently. An organization came to us and had some questions around how they could find restricted group settings, possibly modify, update those. Also, user rights assignments and other security settings were interesting. So I wanted to jump in and talk about this from a PowerShell perspective. Now, thinking about automation and thinking about how you can build solutions to help you repeat processes, decrease errors, all kinds of fun stuff, become more efficient. There's really two areas here: the reporting piece, find the data, and then also the automation piece, or the writing of settings or the changing of settings. So let me dive in. Now, on the reporting piece, pretty straightforward. And if you haven't used the group policy reporting pack, there are PowerShell commandlets that come with the solution, that are part of the solution, that sort of assist in a really interesting way. So just two quick examples. We have a commandlet called export SDM GP settings. This commandlet is about inventorying settings in your GPOs. In this case, I'm just looking at one group policy object and one specific policy area, and I want to dump the data out to the PowerShell pipeline. So this first example, I have an empty group policy object. There's nothing in it. So I run the commandlet export SDM GP settings, and I get nothing. But if I did have a GPO that had security settings in it, here Impact BR1 Test 1, this GPO, by the way, has settings other than security settings, but I only want to find security settings. So if I run that, I will see dumped out to the pipeline are all of the settings in that GPO that are from the security policy area. User rights assignments, and in this case, restricted groups also. Okay, so being able to get to that data is really cool. I can go as far as let's dump that data out to a grid. And now when I have it in the grid view, I can do a lot of interesting things here to reason over it. Now, I don't need all these columns because I'm just really looking at settings and their values. So allow logon locally, Kevin has the rights. Access this computer from the network, Parker has the rights. Access this computer from the network, Kevin has the rights. Array collection. Access the computer from the network, administrators. So you can do lots of interesting things in the grid if you're not familiar with it, to search and filter and find your data. So I love utilizing and working with the reporting pack from the PowerShell because it just adds a lot of interesting capabilities. Okay, so that part's simple. Find the data. If you're a reporting pack customer, you're halfway there. If you're not, go look at some other videos on core walkthroughs of that product. But that's interesting. The second piece is actually writing and manipulating and modifying and updating those settings. And we use our automation engine here. And the automation engine, if you're not familiar with it, is super, super powerful PowerShell interface. And it allows you to read and write settings across your GPOs. And I have a very simple example here. The first piece, if you're not familiar with GPAE, is you need to get a reference to that GPO. So get SDM GP object, and this GPO Impact BR1 Test 1 is the one I want to work with. Okay, now I have it. And now I'm going to grab a reference to the security settings container. Okay, so I just have that. I've sort of set the tone. Now in PowerShell, I have connected to the part of the GPO that I want to work with, that I want to manipulate. If I'm working with restricted groups, I can get another container that goes right down to the restricted groups container, right? I can grab a reference to something closer instead of that high-level security. I also want to find an object in here. Now I have this container. Let me manipulate this a little bit. If I say RG container, RG, not REG, RG container, dot settings, I can actually see if there are settings in that, or if there are settings referenced in that container. There are. It's called administrators. Now I want to connect directly to that setting administrators. Okay. There's actually a more intuitive way to do this other than my get object here. I can say item by name. All right, so now I have that item by name. I get a reference to that administrator's item, that setting itself. Now, once I have a reference to that setting, I can do things with it. What properties exist within that setting? I have a property called members, and I have a property called member of. What are the attributes, or what's the data in that? So in that setting called administrators, there's a property called members, and the value in that is Psycho Kevin, that user object. There's nothing in the member of. So that's querying referencing. Now I want to add. I'm going to grab a reference to that member's data. So right now you know that that is just that one user, Kevin. I want to add a user, in this case Parker, and then I want to put that back up into the GPO, or into the value. So I'm going to do this put X, a multi-valued property put, which includes, it's updating the property members with the value that is in RG members, which I just created, and then I'm going to save that. So now I can see that if I look at this members property, again, I have both Parker and Kevin in there. I can verify this easily. You can see I used to only have Kevin in the restricted group, and now I want to refresh this, and I will see that I now should have Kevin and Parker. Okay, so that GPO has been updated from an automated perspective. Now, what happens if I want to remove the member? I want to, now it's actually pretty simple. I already have a reference to that object. I want to remove Parker, and I want to do another put X, and then save that. And again, if I go back and look at the members, I now see that it's just Kevin in there. So you can add or remove very easily, very simply. Something to play with and something to work with, but it does create a nice opportunity for automation. Imagine if you want to give people specific rights or query those specific rights from a compliance perspective to make sure that only those users who should have it. All right, now let's do that quickly with user rights assignments. Again, following that same model, I'm going to connect to the user rights assignments container, and then I'm going to create a reference to the setting. The setting in this case I'm going to work with is called allow log on locally. Show me all of the users that have the right to log on locally. Now let's look at what properties exist for this. Two different properties. In this case you have defined and the value. Now the value is going to be the actual data in there. So in this case it's Kevin, and then defined is whether that is on or off. So allowed log on locally is defined, yes, and it has a value in it of Kevin, using that get X again for multi-valued attributes. I probably don't need get X for the defined because that's a single value attribute. So now I want to add the right to Parker. Now I'm showing a bad example to make a point. In this case, I'm just going to say, hey, URA settings. This is what's holding that property or that setting, allow log on locally. Just put Parker in there and save it. The reason I wanted to show you the wrong way is when I added Parker to that list, look what happened. That GPO now only includes Parker. I wiped out Kevin because I didn't take the time to grab the existing membership, add Parker to the existing membership, and rewrite the list. I actually just put this value and it wiped out what was there. So be super careful. The correct way to do it, is this. So I'm going to essentially connect to the value as an array or an array list. I'm going to add an item to that array list, and then I'm going to put X. I'm going to put that array back in and save it. And again, my value now is going to include both Kevin and Parker. So be careful. This is all documented super well in the user guide and the sample scripts, but there are ways and easy ways to do things that you don't want to do. So take the time to do the referencing. Now, removing is just as easy, right? Same thing. I'm going to grab the current members. I'm going to remove a user. I'm going to rewrite it to the GPO and commit it. And now the value is back to Kevin. Right? So very cool, interesting, in and out ability to not only grab data quickly through reporting, but update and manipulate that data through automation. Being able to manage your security settings is critical. We're going to continue looking at security settings over the next little bit. Anyway, this is Kevin. Hope you're doing well. Hope that was helpful. I look forward to any feedback you may have, and talk to you soon.